Hey everybody, welcome back to a 40k journey. Today we're going to be painting some wood effects on this ammunition crate. I gave this a base of Rhinox Hide, and now I just based it all over, and I've got it attached with some poster putty or blue tack, same thing, and a little alligator clip here so that I don't have to touch it while I'm handling it. And we don't need to paint the inside because it stands like this, it's closed. So I painted it Rhinox Hide, and I'm going to do some dry brushing. I'm going to start dry brushing with Steel Legion Drab, just because that'll give us kind of a nice base to do some shading and some further dry brushing and highlighting with. And again, it doesn't really matter which browns you have, just start with a really dark brown and then move to a lighter brown. And I've got my dry palette here. And while in dry brushing, you often want to have your brush a little bit wet. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but just having a little teeny tiny bit of moisture on there can help give you a more kind of an even coat and avoid that kind of dusty look. But since we're doing wood and it's out in the field, this is actually desirable. So I'm going to skip the water, just daub a little bit onto my Wet n Wild makeup brush here, and then we're gonna work that into the bristles with the paper towel here. And then when we've got most of it pretty well worked in, gonna use our dry palette here and just find any location that's, you know, kind of vaguely flat, and I'm gonna use this spar here, give that a brush, see if that's looking the way we want it to. Looks pretty good to me. So now we're going to go ahead and we're just going to dry brush this all over. And if the color's a little uneven, that's okay. Because again, wood texture, you know, untreated wood just naturally has some different tones in it anyway. Excellent. Okay, doesn't matter if it's completely uniform. We actually don't really want it to be uniform. And it doesn't really matter if there's some darker spots in there, because those will help add some shadows for later. Gotta get it in there. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, now that we are done with that, we are going to shade. And I'm gonna use a little bit of Agrax Earthshade here. So, and yes, this latch here is a metal color, but don't worry about that. We'll be coming back to get that later. We want to do the main wood color first. Excellent. Now we leave this to dry, and it's really important to let this dry thoroughly, because if you try to dry brush the next layer on top of this, it's going to smear and it's not going to look very good. So we're going to give this a minute to dry nice and good and even. Okay, now that everything is dry, we're looking good. And really, if you like the way this looks right now, you could just leave it. You know, if you don't mind the darker color, just run with it. But we're gonna use some Baneblade Brown here. We're gonna dry brush with this. Same procedure as before. We don't need to moisturize our brush at all, because that kind of dusty look is exactly what we're going for here. So same procedure, just kind of back and forth, back and forth. Fill in the extra shadow created where the paint gathers along these beams here. Looking good. All right, now we're coming in for the edge highlight. I'm going to be using Zandri Dust here, but you can use whatever kind of light bone brownish color you prefer. And again, we're using that long edge of the brush, just very lightly going over the hard edges here. Okay, now that we're done there, I'm just going to do the metal latch here and the hinges here. And I'm going to start with a little Abaddon Black, because we're going to be painting those metallic color, and we always want to start with kind of a darker base color. All right, got our Abaddon Black here. I'm not going to need a whole terrible lot, so I'm just going to load a little bit onto my wet palette. And just going to get this right here. Is in a future episode, but okay. Got our black layer here. That looks fantastic. Gonna give that just a minute to dry here. Then we're gonna come back in with some Leadbelcher. Okay, got our Leadbelcher here, and just like the Abaddon Black, we don't need that much. So I'm just gonna load a little bit onto the wet palette. And then we're just gonna go over. On the side here. And we're done. If we really wanted to, we could get a lighter silver and do some edge highlighting, but I think I am going to call this good. So, thanks for joining me for another 40K journey. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon.